Oh, my name is Christy Bolingbroke. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Artistic Director from the National Center for Choreography at the University of Akron. And here in my role, both at NCCAkron and as a guest invited to interview James Gregg on behalf of GroundWorks Dance Theater. James, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And this Artist Talk series is an opportunity for Groundworks audiences to get to know you among all the choreographers that they've been bringing through, so we can chop it up a bit about process and inspiration and navigating a career as a professional dance artist, all the good stuff.
I'm ready.
Great. Let's start with an introduction about you a little bit. So you've danced with a lot of different companies as well as making your own work. And I always like to invite artists to answer this question because to this day, the scariest invitation you can make to someone is come to my dance show. So how do you define your dance aesthetic? How would you describe it?
I mean, it's ever changing. For me, I'm always somebody who likes to grow and to educate myself, and I always want to expand my vocabulary. But the aesthetic that I use, there's a slight base of ballet, always, because that's how I started, with more contemporary and breakdance influences now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, certainly from your work with Victor Quijada, and then some of the repertory work at Body Traffic, I think that breakdancing is more visible, certainly. But there's a fluidness to it too. I was watching some of the videos that you had shared, and the work almost reminded me what was consistent as one of those little puzzle games where you have to move one part in order to move all of the other parts.
Exactly.
Um, so I'm curious when you every artist finds their inspiration in different places. So is it a mood board? Is it a question? Is it a piece of music? Like, where do you begin?
I mean, every process is different, but for my movement, well, especially during the pandemic, I set up, um, I recorded myself constantly improving, and then I would give myself notes. I had no one else to give notes to, so I would give myself notes on what to do, what I saw repeating, what I saw connected, um, and then from there, I just kept building and building and seeing what I liked, what I could discard. Especially with improv, I feel like it's so difficult. We get into habits, and I wanted to see what habits were nice and like kind of useful to keep, and what habits I could just push away, and that weren't necessary. You know.
Mm. I love this concept of giving yourself notes. That sounds also a little bit practice of self-care, because it also wasn't in a place of we're trying to fix things. I think a lot of times we can get focused on the product.
Right.
And so notes are like, oh, that could have been better, or you could point your toe more,
Right.
or but this idea of what I heard you reflecting on was like what you noticed, what you observed, what patterns seem to come up.
Yeah.
And that
Exactly.
is, it sounds more reflexive. Yeah.
Yeah, more about nurturing oneself. It's like planting a seed and watching it grow a little bit. You're not going to yell at it to come out of the soil. You're going to be patient and have to wait, and that's kind of what I did. And I mean, I had no other choice during the pandemic. So I mean, I took the opportunity to fine tune my craft, and also I'd been dancing with like a Victor, or an Azure Barton, or like anybody. I have all these people information inside my body, and I
Mm,
wanted this to let that go.
mm,
You know what I mean? I can use the tools that they gave me, but I don't want to move like that. I want to be myself and see what my voice was, from the root. So that
mm.
was kind of the goal of doing that.
When we had our preparatory conversation, you made a comment where not just COVID related, but that it's been a process of reinventing what you like and what you like to study. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Particularly, I love that it's not just I have different tastes, but reinventing it.
Right. Yeah, because I'm like I said, I'm always like reinventing myself and wanting to push further, wanting to push dance more. So I took the opportunity, and we had so much, dance on film that we were watching. So I also took the opportunity to watch things on stage, because we had that opportunity too, like to see the NDT online and all of this. And
Netherlands Dance Theater for the uninitiated.
Sorry,
Netherlands Dance Theater. Sure.
So like I just saw what I would like to push in, or what I would like to take out, or like why, or questioning why is this step there, when like making sense of what the work is. And I feel like what you said about my work earlier, that's what I'm doing, like of the puzzle. Like I move this, and then this has to move, and then that has to move. And if there's a jump, now I really notice it, because of the study I've been doing, and then the pieces I've been watching, and watching everyone else's work. So it's been a great educational time for me, and I feel like I've really found this kind of like organic flow within the complexity, which has been super fun.
Yeah. Well, and this isn't the first piece that you have set on Groundworks before.
No.
So before we explore that, can you remind us and reflect on the last time you got to work with Groundworks?
Yeah, I was not completely different, but I was using a different tools, I guess you could say. And then I was also playing with a story this time, like the last time. Like it was about Sleeping Beauty, but like the darker version, the poem, the original. And I use that as inspiration for the catapult of the piece, not so much the movement. And I really enjoyed that piece too. I think it was fun. It was fun to play with different characters and situations. And yeah, I'm really happy with that piece. But I kept questioning myself with the movement. I was like, oh, I want to do this with the movement. I want to do this with the movement. So this piece is basically about just the movement. There is a story. There is a concept. I guess an abstract concept with it, but it's just about putting the movement together and letting the people watch the puzzle.
And did you get to come out and work in person with Groundworks, or was this a rehearsal process entirely on Zoom?
No, I had 2 weeks in the studio with Groundworks, and then we've been meeting like every Monday. I give notes, and David's been sending me video of the dancers running the piece the week before, and then on Mondays I coach them and change things, and just constantly evolving the piece, having them get the concepts a bit more, and like having chats with them. So it's been really fun, actually. That I love that process of growth within a work. I think it's so nice.
Does that process of notes carry similar with how you were giving yourself notes?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I might be nicer to them than I am to myself.
Oh, no.
But yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think I just want to make things better. I want to edit. I want to, I really want to like take out, like, a lack of better words, take the bullshit out, and like make this clean, beautiful work. Like when it gets muddled, I'm like, just get out. Because then if it's muddled to me, it's going to be muddled to an audience member too, right? It'll be unclear. So just seeing the clarity.
The word distill comes to mind, and even to the point where We were joking earlier that I went for color as a background today, and you went for very minimal, clean.
Yes, black and white, and maybe with a little bit of gray in there somewhere.
Yeah. I'm curious because some of the other videos that are available online, I'm thinking of, was it Doomed? Was the duet between you and Rubber Legs.
Mhm.
And that also has a real distilled, clean idea for those that haven't seen it. You can find it on YouTube, but it's on the ground the entire time. Like you and this other dancer are intertwined the entire time, but you find so much movement to explore, and just when you're like, oh my god, they couldn't do something else new, but you find somewhere else to put your feet and your arms and your heads through negative space. And then there's also the added choreography of the camera, which after a while you're like, is the world spinning? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on? So you've always been, in a lot of your other work, working with camera. I'm curious, are you directing it differently when you go on Zoom? A specific angle? Do you watch the dance from different angles each time, each Monday? Or how is that tool kind of in your pocket informing or shaping your communication with the dancers?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to find a different angle, to watch the piece or see what's happening. I do like to watch from the back, from behind, to see if it's still interesting.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because like sometimes it could just be so frontal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think working with video has helped, because there's angles that you would never think of that you'd be like, okay, let's shift this way, right? So that has informed me a lot, and in playing, and especially in the rehearsal process, like switching things up, having them try things upside down, on their sides, just to see maybe there's something I didn't think of that could be really beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that that'll say a lot for our friends tuning in, who might be wondering when they can see this work, because it's a part of Groundwork's upcoming seasons in two different venues, one in Akron at the new night stage at the Akron Civic Theater in the coming weeks, and then one at the Pivot Center in Cleveland. So it's my personal sort of like joy in this work that I often get to see a dance more than once, because you always will notice something different because it happens in real time. And now also with your perspective, like you can see it from a different angle, and it could be something else entirely, which I know Groundworks has played with a little bit with some of the films that they've also made during the pandemic too.
Mhm.
I want to go back to how you worked with so many other artists, and not all choreographers still dance. So, as a very active mover and performer, if you could reflect a little bit more specifically, like how does all of that knowledge, I think what you've talked about it maybe as a personal syllabus,
Mhm.
reflect, and inform your work? Yeah, like where are you carrying it forward, and where are you letting it go, and how do you keep space for other people's artistic vision, while still trying to find your own?
Right. That's a very good question. That's a loaded question. I well, I can use Rubber Band as an example. So before, I was mostly in rep companies, which I really enjoyed. You got to work with a lot of different
Mhm.
choreographers,
Variety, yeah.
the variety, and like you got a taste of their style, but 6 to 8 weeks, I find you won't really fully understand
Mm.
working with, if that makes sense. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, so at one point I was like, oh, I've never worked with just one choreographer, and I wanted to do breakdance. So I went with Victor,
Mhm.
right? And so I learned from the ground up how he works. So I know this
Literally
is
from
a
the
long-winded.
ground,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. For
So
as a
he had
fellow tall person, you had a totally new relationship to the ground, I imagine.
exactly, and that's what I wanted. I want something challenging, something that was different, just all encompassing, like figuring out what this method is. I found it so interesting, and I learned so much from Victor. But then when I started moving on my own, I looked like Victor.
Mm.
Now I have the tools to turn that off and on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I find that really interesting, and now I've been able to do that with other people. So now when I'm working with, you know, an Azure, I know who she is. I've been working with her, so I can turn that part of myself on. You know, I have the tools for that. Victor, I have the tools for that. You know, there's a lady named Anne Plemondon that I also work with, who's Victor's wife. I do her work too, and I can also flip that switch. But that was a very long process to figure out
Mm.
on how to do that, you know, because I don't want to move like these people when I'm doing my work.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to look like I've stolen information. You know, so that was very important to me, and that's why I went through that journey to like I can take ideas, right, but I can filter them through my thought, my process, my body, so I don't rip them off with their tools, right? Which is so hard in dance, I find, because sometimes especially when you work with somebody a long time, you'll do something and you don't see it.
Well, and
Right.
that's part of, I think, one of the great challenges, and you know, like how do you copyright dance? You know, when we have the right and we have the left, as far as
Mhm.
like you've got 2 feet and two
Right.
arms, and who's to say that this combination is uniquely only belonging to this one artist, and no one
Exactly.
else will ever do right, left, right, right,
Right.
left. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just being you know, generous to them and myself, um, finding my own tools within the knowledge that I've learned from so many people.
Mm. And so as you were talking about being able to sort of get a taste, maybe not going super deep after 6 to 8 weeks, but remaining that flexibility so that it doesn't look the same across the board. Was a little bit reminded. I think that's also a testament to the Groundworks dancers, because they perform the works of so many
Mm-hmm.
different artists too, and so
Yeah.
having that flexibility. Um, but what do you look for in a dancer? If you were to be able to cast it yourself, or if you're in a conversation with a company or someone like
Mm-hmm.
Shima Takahara, like what do the dancers need in order to be ready and capable of doing your work?
They need to be very open. They need to be able to cut things. Don't get
Hmm.
married to anything. You know, everything is not gonna be in the piece. Just you know, be ready for anything to happen in the space. Um, and someone who really wants to understand where I'm coming from. You know, I think an open heart has a lot to do with like the work that I like to do, just like being vulnerable
Mm.
and open. You also need to be able to like get down on the floor and not be afraid to fall. Like you should just be an open vessel. I think that's the best type of person I could have for my work, with no
Mm.
chips on the shoulder, you know.
Mhm.
We're all gonna have bad days and frustrating days, and I personally liked as an artist when I was frustrated, because that meant that I was learning something.
Mm.
You know, but I always looked at it that way, not to be like, oh, I'm never gonna get it. Woe is me. I'd be like, no, I'm gonna get this, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna understand it, and I'm gonna be the best out of everybody doing it. That was more like the way that I went for it. So I would love a person like that. Um, Also very open with communication about like, oh, I'm really frustrated, and then like I love being able to talk and nurture and help out. So yeah.
I love that, and I really appreciate you staying true as an artist. To me, in my opinion, I think that ability to edit, to not be afraid to let go of something if it's not working, that's really the sign of a very accomplished choreographer. because it's, so easy to get emotionally attached to something. But you said it earlier too, like if it's confusing to you, it's going to be confusing to the audience if it's muddied, and looking at that. Speaking of the audience, I would be remiss not to acknowledge that you are more than welcome in whatever chat function is available to you, depending on whichever platform you are streaming into our conversation. If you have questions for James, we would love to hear them. So please feel free to drop those in the chat function. I can ask questions all day, but I'm happy to pivot to those from the audience as well. So that's your warning and invitation to go ahead, and we'd love to hear from you while we continue chatting. I am curious, like, why was there a moment that you chose to become a choreographer? Because that's something not every dancer does, these dual roles. So I'm curious in your journey, if you might be able to reflect on if there was a moment or something that said, yes, go do this.
Well, for me, I always wanted to be a choreographer. I didn't know what that meant. Like when I was watching, like as a 9-year-old dancing, like I didn't really understand that. I knew someone made the work, or like but I was like, I want to create, like I want to create the steps. And I was always like that. So I think I just inherently knew that I wanted to be a creator. And I thought that the best way for me to be the best choreographer was to be the best dancer I could be and understand what the body should be doing, what my body should be doing, what these people, are giving me. Like, so I took so many classes and this and that to become a better choreographer. So yeah, I've always wanted to just create. I made my family watch little shows that I put on. I'm sure they loved it.
I think a lot of families can relate to that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'd be like, oh, it's your birthday. I made a dance. Like, here we go.
You don't still do that as an adult?
No, I lost that.
You get paid to do it now. That's
Exactly.
all right.
I'll get them tickets to a show this time.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and that embracing that spirit of play is fantastic advice in its own right. But I'm curious, do you have any advice? We have a lot of students that are in the Groundworks community from the company's relationships both at Cleveland State and the University of Akron. So what advice would you give for upcoming dance students who are at that pre-professional level, maybe some emerging choreographers?
Yeah. I remember when we talked the other day, I said this, and I actually mentioned it to my students when I taught class on Tuesday. We talked about looking at the details. I really think if you concentrate on detail and transition, you'll be a better dancer, a better creator, and you'll train your eye better to see dance as well. So I feel like finding the details is a huge one. I was like that as a student. I remember I went to LA my first time as like a 12-year-old, and I took a hip hop class and she had us do a combination, and like it was like a fake audition, and there was only 2 of us left because of the detail work. And then everybody else got cut or whatever. And I remember I was, as a 12-year-old, being like, wow, this is intense. But now I get it. I get why that happened in class. And so pay attention to that, students. I think it'll really help. Also editing, like we've been talking about. And it's you really need to grow and able to do that editing, that cutting, and not being married to, this holding on to it so tightly. You're going to do it. But at one point you'll just be like, all right, it's fine. We can let that go. And you take as many like master classes as possible from people in town. Groundworks brings in so many people that, and they have classes. And I think, taking advantage of that as a student, even though we're tired and we're in school and this and that. And I did that a lot as a young professional. Even when I was dancing, my first job with River North,
Mm.
I would go take classes all over the city.
Mm-hmm. Just that staying curious and tasting and sampling so much.
Yeah.
Sounds like it likely helped keep things from being stale and kept you on your toes a little bit too.
It did literally kept me on my toes.
We have a couple questions, and I love this end of the spectrum because we have from Samantha, who acknowledged that they're 35 years old and they're curious. What do you enjoy most about being an older dancer? I mean, we have a different relationship with the body as an instrument than we age with it. What do you enjoy about being an older dancer? And if you also want to acknowledge, what do you like least?
Well, it's a really good question. I think it's so fun to be an older dancer now. It's like, all of a sudden it like flipped. I remember being the baby everywhere, and now it's like, hey, daddy. But
Overnight, right?
yeah, you're like, what happened? For I love as an older dancer the information that's in my body. When you and I'm going to relate this to other older dancers too, because I saw William Forsythe's last show, and it was all dancers that were 40 plus. And seeing the way that they moved, and I'm relating this to myself too, seeing that information that's in the body is so different through someone who's been in the craft so long than somebody that's just fresh out of college. And I love seeing the maturity and the exactness, and they knew exactly where their bodies were going, and I just thought it was so stunning. So that's what I enjoy. I hope I look like that. But that's how I feel when I'm dancing. I feel that I have more room to play as an older dancer. And I still feel like pretty young body wise. There hasn't been much of a difference for me. So I like that a lot too. I cross train, so I'm taking care of myself. But yeah, there's nothing I don't like about about that.
That's good.
Yeah, I think everybody's answer would be completely different. I mean, I just did the show with I had all these. It was a wide variety of ages in the cast right now, and like I'm the one that's just like boom, 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 moving around the space, and like that felt really good too. Like to be able to still do.
Well, and it is interesting to reflect, because I don't know how self-aware any of us are in our younger selves, and then you look back and you're like, oh, that's what I was doing. And certainly for myself, I also used to choreograph a lot as a kid and was doing that. And now when I look back at it, I was like, well, of course I was choreographing and performing in numbers with 30 or 40 people and could keep track of everyone's tracks. Like that's just what I do now. It's just not on stage.
Right.
So I do think there's some inherent things in our like young artistic selves that will continue to take shape, that they'll serve us in different ways. They just may look differently.
Exactly.
But we have these natural tendencies and habits. And we have Steve Staccato, who also is tuned in. Thank you, Steve, for your question, and would love to hear more detail about the new work for GroundWorks. So I am remiss if you could share with us a title, other production elements, if there's specific music you want to give a shout out for, and give us kind of a larger sense.
But yeah. So the title, I went through this whole process with the title, and it's such a clean slate. This work for me is a very clean slate. All the dancers are in the same costume, kind of this neutral color. Looks almost dystopian, like in a way, like the way that it's cut, just very clean. For me, I related it as there's 4 characters that are all the same person, but from like different, like it's like the multiverse in a way. So it's like different trajectories of different people's paths, but they're all the same person, and how you would relate to that. So it's a little bit heady, but it's about that relationship and the growth of each individual and them sharing their knowledge with themselves. So that's kind of what the piece is about, their relationship, the relationship with yourself.
And just in general, your relationship to music, but also the sound score for this new work. And a P.S., I don't think you actually gave us the title.
I didn't. Yeah, it's U/04.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That already sounds very heady. It's a formula. I love it.
Yeah, it's a formula.
So I'm curious at what point in your process you sort of edit that relationship to music. And I offer this, I'll give a bit of feedback as far as what I've observed about your work. It is so specific, but it's not Mickey Mousing to the music. So there's kind of a different combination or conversation going on there. So like, is the music always on? Is it something, do you like to work in silence? Do you have it? And then kind of like, how does that piece of the artistic puzzle drop into place?
Yeah, for this one, I was constantly listening to music. Okay, well, I'll give you my inspiration point. There is this creator called The Caretaker who did a 6-hour album for Alzheimer's. And it's the stages of Alzheimer's, and so it's like this, like, and which is some of the music in the background of the piece. So it's like this music that keeps fading in and out with, like, it almost sounds like 1930s like big band music in the background, but very, very subtle. So I liked this, like, dissonant soundscape. So I kept, like, researching, and, like, every time I heard something that had that kind of sensation, I put it in a folder. And then I think I had 50 or 60 songs in a folder. And then I went through and I was like, okay, which one inspires me? And then I would move it up the list. And then I've somehow I figured it all out. I think there's probably like 15 different songs in there, but cut out. I played with it. And with the movement, I constantly have to have music on as I'm creating. Otherwise, the silence drives me nuts because my mind needs to keep some sound. I remember being in some rehearsals when the choreographer didn't have music, and I was like, it just makes me feel more relaxed if there's like some noise. But there's like music cues that I would like the dancers to have, but it's okay if they explore and don't hit those sounds. And I put enough, like, buffer within the work that each section can bleed into the other one. So, like, they don't, I wanted this creation for them to be able to take their time and to really delve into the movement and not rush through and feel panicked about having to, like, be musical. Because I now see that the body sings a bit more when you let it be free. So they can play.
That's so interesting. And for those who maybe have not been in the studio or like, what do you mean that there's room or buffer to play? We had an artist on the ground recently who had made a work, and to the music, that work was 4.5 minutes long. And then they did an experiment where they invited the dancers to do the dance in their own desired timing without music. And when they did that and used their breath and listened to each other, the duet became 7 minutes long. So it literally, so to not feel rushed by those sound cues or music cues can be so empowering for the performers to be able to say, like, I know it's there, but I also am not beholden to it. That's a
Yeah.
really interesting idea.
Yeah, I like that. And then like I would tell, like, there's cues where I'm like, okay, I should speed up if I'm getting a bit too late, or there's certain parts that I want, I say efficiently done, not speedy. So it's just like very efficient, matter of fact, but without trying to like speed through. But I gave them those notes. Okay, this should be more efficient with how you're moving. Now you can play there's a sound here that I would love if you got here around that, And I think, and I like being able to do that as a dancer and an artist, and I do solo works now on my own, and not being married to that really changes a lot. Like you said, like you can breathe or you can speed up depending on your day. It's going to be different, and I
I
think
was gonna
that's so
say, you've made room for the human.
Yeah.
Right, like the dancers, we often look like superheroes on stage because dancers are amazing, let's be real. But they are still human, and that's the beauty of live performance. For those of us that haven't been to a live performance in a while, that it's so variable. It's back to that like special joy that I get to see something more than once, because the humans performing it, they also come and arrive at it in a different way. We're going into our sort of home stretch together. And so I want to make one more call out for anyone of the audience who is maybe holding on to a question. It's okay if you've already asked a question, you can ask another one. There's no limit. They're all free. So this would be your moment, though, to please speak up in the chat, and we would love to hear from you about that. So, James, are you going to get to come back to Northeast Ohio anytime soon?
Well, not for the shows, unfortunately. I would love to see them because, they're going to be in two completely different spaces, and I'd love to see how the work translates. I think the one in Akron is more about like everybody's around the stage, and this piece
it's a new
is so
space.
wonderful for that.
I think it's going to be even maybe one of the first dance performances in that space, because it really is conceived for music. Yeah. Yeah. So we do have a special request about what is there a story behind the faux moose head? We're hoping it's faux behind you, James.
There is, and there's a unicorn.
Oh, well, of course there's a unicorn with a crown. Yes.
Well, 100%, as there should be. The moose head, interesting. I had it, so I was in Montreal dancing for 13 years, and there's moose in Canada. So I got this moose head, and they sent me a second one. So I started giving moose heads to people that I love. And so I gave both of my moose heads away when I moved from Montreal to my two best friends. So I got myself another one.
Yeah.
It reminds me of my friends in Canada, and it makes me smile when I see it.
I love that. That's fabulous. Thank you, Steve. Yeah. That's fantastic. Excellent. What is next for you then? Because you're also in an opera right now. We get to premiere this new work here in Northeast Ohio in the next couple of weeks. And for those tuning in, I'd be remiss not to encourage you to check out groundworksdance.org so that you can find the performances that are nearest you. What else is coming up for you? What are you looking forward to, James?
Well, I'm doing another creation in Detroit for Eisenhower Dance Company with Rubber Legs, who you saw in Doom. So it's a collaboration. We'll be doing that. in February, March, and April, I'll be traveling doing a show with Anne Plemondon. We have a full evening duet, so over an hour duet that's going to be traveling around and touring. Yeah, and then I'll be creating and doing stuff online all through that. So
yeah, so we can follow you on Instagram. That's fabulous. I love that you're going to be up in the Detroit area. You're hitting all the spots in the Rust Belt. Fabulous.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being open to talking about process and excavating a little bit. Thank you all to our audience friends who tuned in to listen, and you'll be able to tune into this recording as well through, I believe, Groundworks YouTube channel. So I think with that, we can say goodbye, James.
Goodbye. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Bye, y'all.